Let's do some film analysis. Okay, so for this clip, you're obviously going to have to turn your camera to the side. Sorry about that. This is a clip from Deep Blue Sea, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Basically, I write about this in my thesis, and I thought I would share some thoughts about it today. Before we go any further, I just want to remind everybody that this is a film analysis clip, so there's very much spoilers in this analysis. Sorry. Oh, and I should probably also mention that this is a horror movie, so some of the images that you're about to see could be kind of triggering. Okay, so we've got a basic setup of a bunch of people are stuck on a rig in the middle of the ocean. No one's coming to look for them. There's a big storm that's going to tear them apart, and also there are like super smart sharks that are going to eat them if they don't find a way to escape to the surface soon. So Mike Rappaport here is one of the scientists. By training, he's really a comedian, so I think that knowing this kind of sets up the humor that's about to happen in a more meaningful way. He's kind of freaking out about their situation, and Samuel Jackson's character, who's kind of like a businessman and coach or leader or something, kind of comes into the scene to stop everybody from arguing and get them to agree on a plan in order to save themselves. So I mentioned casting because I think it's pretty important when you think about that in films. When you watch movies, it's important whether or not you recognize certain actors from other movies. Sometimes that has a bearing on how you kind of relate to the scenes that they're in, to the movie that they're in as a whole. For instance, it's really good to remember that at the time this movie came out in 1999, Samuel Jackson was just coming into his own in terms of fame, right? So he had been in Pulp Fiction a couple of years before, was currently being like showered with praise and award nominations and wins for that performance, and then others to come, like A Time to Kill. And he was basically known as, at the time, a really big actor like he is today. So this scene occurs about an hour into the film, and from the film's perspective, we have like 45 minutes to go. It's an hour and 45 minutes, this movie. So you wouldn't necessarily expect what's about to happen. It kind of comes out of nowhere. And I want to talk a little bit about our kind of emotional reactions when we witness the scene for the first time, and then when we witness the scene multiple times, like say if we rewatch this film. Okay, so I'm kind of cheating. What happens to Samuel L. Jackson? For those of you that already know, good for you. But for those of us who don't, let's watch.
Nature can be lethal, but it doesn't hold a candle to man. Now you've seen how bad things can get and how quick they can get that way. Well, they can get a whole lot worse. So we're not going to fight anymore. We're going to pull together and we're going to find a way to get out of here. First, we're gonna seal off this.
Okay, so I'm guessing that those of you who haven't seen this film probably weren't expecting that to happen. The reason I'm making this prediction is because, generally speaking, it's really uncommon for films to kill off central characters who we've grown accustomed to at this point in the movie. 2/3 of the way into the film, right? I mean, we kind of thought he was gonna make it through this, or at least maybe like die at the very end, not quite like at this point in the film. So for that reason, we can say that Samuel Jackson's death is really, really surprising in the context of this scene in this film. And his fellow characters, who are the research scientists and shark wranglers, played by Thomas Jane, Saffron Burrows, and Mike Rappaport, are just kind of shocked. They really don't know what's happening, and we're kind of in shock with them. But the first time I saw this film, it was on probably DVD at the time, a couple of months after it had come out in cinemas, and I laughed. The reason I think I laughed was because I had seen lots of movies that came before this film, right? Like movies like Jaws, where the main characters, through all their hard work, generally kind of come out successful in the end. We spend our time in the film investing emotionally in those characters, and even though some of them might die along the way, the ones that are really important to the plot generally survive. I think at this point in the film, the filmmakers are kind of signaling that they're in the know about what kinds of movies came before Deep Blue Sea, like Jaws, and they want to do something different. Now, it's not necessarily new and different to kill off characters in surprising ways. We already saw that in Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960, where Marion Crane gets killed off in the first, 20 minutes or something. And then we would see it again later towards the end of season 1, Game of Thrones, when Ned Stark just, well, you know what happens to him. And that's generally what I think is really interesting about this scene and about this movie in particular. There aren't many examples in film history like this. In contrast to the 2 examples I just gave, what's unique about the Deep Blue Sea case is that it allows for 2 different ways of experiencing the film. Basically, the first way is the kind of generic way that you would expect, where you haven't seen the film, you haven't seen too many of these films, you really aren't sure what to expect, and then Samuel L. Jackson dies and he's and it's really shocking and scary, and you're afraid and you feel as desperate and lost as the characters portrayed on screen. And then there's the experience that someone a little bit more in the know would have, which explains why some of us might laugh at watching the scene for the first time or the second viewings. And that's because the film is basically nodding to the history of films that like it that have come before. So basically what it's doing is kind of poking fun at the tropes that we often see in films of this kind. The humor is born out of the filmmaker's relationship with the audience that, let's say, is a little bit more in the know about these kinds of movies. Okay, so there's lots more to be said about this clip and this film in particular, but I'm going to leave it there. I have a paper that I'm currently writing about this scene and this film, and there's lots more in there that creates a more careful argument about what I've just tried to convey. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, please follow for more. I'm happy to hear your thoughts in the comments section. How did you experience this scene when you first saw it? Were you scared and shocked, or did you have the same reaction as me? Did you laugh?